There is much talk these days about Sri Lankan Airlines and what it should be doing and so forth. But if you look at it historically, these discussions on Sri Lankan Airlines, it was the SriLankan, it was the Ceylon and so forth, have been going on for decades. And really, if you are speaking about economically, the future of that airline has not really made any remarkable progress. And it's been largely in the hands of government and government ownership. There was a short period in which, under the Chandrika Kumaratunga administration, that they negotiated with Emirates, and Emirates basically took a fair share of the airline and they managed the airline. And then I won't get into it, you know, that overnight virtually, Emirates was gone because of the conflicts it had with the Sri Lankan government of the day. So this is the what has happened in history. And then when you look at it after that, what can actually be done, every government comes and they appoint a new board of directors to the airline, and every board comes up with a plan and they present the plan, and the politicians nod their heads, and then after a few years that board is gone, maybe a new government, a new board comes, the new plans are put, everybody nods their head, and that's how it has been going on. I must say this, having sat in Parliament for several years and on the COPE committee, that really the issue was not with any individuals. And when I look at the management of Sri Lankan Airlines, it's the issue is not with really individuals. Obviously, there have been negatives on some individuals and that should be dealt with, but the real issue has been to do with structure. And I might say this on Sri Lankan Airlines, the issue is not to do with staff either. The airline, I'm generalizing here, provides a very good service. I've been using it myself even recently, and very good level of service. So then what's the problem? The problem is a structural problem in the airline. We are trying to run a business without capital. And then we are basically borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. No business, forget the airline, no business can be run like that. You need capital and you need debt, and there is a certain ratio in which that will work. So risks are then divided. The depositor takes some risk, but the investors take the other risk, and the investors then will make sure that decisions are taken to give them a return, and that ensures sustainability, economic and financial viability and sustainability. And that's what has not actually happened. So even presently, when I sometimes look at the news and I hear the stories in the news, it's sometimes worrying because we are not really attacking the fundamental issue. The fundamental issue is a structural issue. The structural issue is you need capital. Now you have Sri Lankan Airlines, which is where the big losses are, and then you have its subsidiaries. You have a catering business, you have a ground handling business, you have engineering, and these subsidiaries are generally profitable. But the airline is a problem. So one solution that often is brought forward is, oh, let's sell the subsidiaries and we can get a good return on that. That's true. That's not rocket science, but that's a mistake. If the recommendation came with, let's close Sri Lankan Airlines and then sell the subsidiaries, then we can think about it. But if you're going to keep Sri Lankan Airlines, then selling the subsidiaries separately is not an answer. We need to be careful, what we are doing. One day I was asked to head a committee and to put forward a proposal. I got all the experts in from the aviation, from Sri Lankan Airlines, I got them from the central bank, and also from the legal side, the General's Department, and we came up with a proposal. The fundamental thing of the proposal was, if you're not closing the airline, you have to make it viable. If you're going to make it viable, then how do you make it viable? So fundamentally, we said to become a national airline, you need to have Sri Lankan ownership, majority ownership 51%. So we'll keep Sri Lankan majority ownership because we want to be a national airline. And there are certain advantages in being a national airline, so you benefit from that. So you give 49% or whatever to the investor, it can be a foreign investor. Government takes the balance 49. And then the balancing one, you give it to Sri Lankans, but Sri Lankans who will work with the investor, because you want to make sure that management is in the hands of the investor. So you maintain your national airline, and you basically make sure that without political interference, the airline could actually run and make the hard decisions. Then you need to have the structure in which, because the airline is a negative net worth, right, and nobody is going to really invest in it unless you can take care of the debt, and then there's a limit to which government can take care of the debt, then you need to look at it in a structure, and the report came up that a structure in which you'll treat the airline, and you look at the subsidiaries, and you give the airline ownership in the subsidiaries as well. So then the airline benefits from the incomes of the subsidiaries. So the investor knows that they can get some income from the subsidiaries. The subsidiaries also can have other investors as well. So it's a structural issue. I'm just using this explanation to show that it's a structural issue. Separating the subsidiaries and selling it separately is not the answer unless you're closing the airline down. Otherwise, if you want to make the airline work, then you have to look at it in a holistic way. And this needs to be done, and this needs to be done carefully, and this needs to be done quickly. Because otherwise what's happening is people like myself travel on the airline, and sometimes it's heartbreaking because it's the poor grandma and ma who are going to the shop, who are paying taxes, who are actually funding my air ticket.